Hey everybody, I'm Alistair Stevens. Welcome to Porch Club. Welcome to the Point North Media live Q&A. I've been saying Porch Club all day because I've been talking about Porch Club all day. If you haven't yet heard Porch Club, head on over to commonroomradio.com where you can hear more about Porch Club. Porch Club, which is the show called Porch Club. This is not the show called Porch Club. If you've shown up for Elizabeth and Sarah, I mean, I can only apologize. I feel like I spend a lot of my life apologizing for not being either Elizabeth and or Sarah. Still, this is the hand that I have been dealt. I just have to struggle on answering questions this week from you, the wonderful Porch Club listeners. Guys, it has been a hell of a week. I've got to tell you, here we are Friday evening, and it's wonderful to be doing a Friday evening Porch Club. I'm just going to continue doing this, I guess. It's Friday evening, which is a wonderful time to be doing a Point North Q&A. But yeah, it's been a long week, you guys, mostly because last night I held my Magic and Metaphor fantasy class, which was really fun. It was really, really great to be talking about stories on that level with that depth. It's been a little while since I've taught a class, and it's a very different kind of energy from a live podcast. So it was really great to do that. But wow, it has been kind of exhausting. Yes, Sophia Shelton here says in the YouTube chat, the words Porch Club have lost meaning now. Chris says, do you have Porch Club envy, Alistair? And Chris, I'm going to just jump on that because I'm going to anticipate a question that I got from Yvette, longtime listener, who asked me which podcasts I would like to take credit for or which podcasts I would like to be involved in or would have liked to have been involved in. And Porch Club is definitely one of them. I am such a huge fan of everything that happens over at Common Room Radio. They're just fantastic. And Elizabeth and Sarah have done such great work with Porch Club. Of course, Fathoms Deep is a magnificent podcast dedicated to the Star's original program, Black Sails. So I'm kind of into that too. I would like to take credit for that show if I could. Of course I can't, but I would like to. If I'm extending my reach beyond Common Room Radio, I don't know why I would, but if I were to do such a thing, Welcome to Night Vale probably is the show that I would like to take credit for, or the show that I would like to have been involved with. Welcome to Night Vale started off as such a simple and straightforward series and became this enormously complex mythology. It adopted this, constructed this enormously complex mythology. That is a podcast for which I have, a really profound and I think well-justified envy. If I can say that out loud on the internet, I guess I can. That's a thing that I can do. The Adventure Zone, also by the McElroy brothers and their father Clint, is an enormously complex show, which again also started off as a super simple idea. It's a live play D&D podcast, which has become, particularly in the course of the last 3 or 4 episodes, a thing of genuine magnificence. The Adventure Zone is preposterously good. I can't recommend that highly enough. Let me see here. Oh, Chris says I can take credit for so many of our podcasts, Alistair, especially via the Spoken World class. Yeah, it's pretty great, you guys. It's pretty great to see all of these podcasts spring up. I have been from the very beginning a huge evangelist for podcasts, a huge fan of the podcast forum, as we've discussed before here in the Point North Q&As. Hey, I said Point North. That's pretty good. I have listened to more podcasts, arguably, than many people should. I still managed to consume a huge number of podcasts, even with the schedule that I have, because I basically listen to podcasts before I do anything else, including, reading books and watching movies and talking to friends and family. That's where I am. So yes. Oh, Sarah's here in the YouTube chat. Oh, being very sweet. Sarah says, seriously, if it weren't for Alistair, Common Room Radio wouldn't exist. That may be literally true, but good Lord, yes. Jean says, just the astounding rampant success of Night Vale is worth infinite envy and admiration. I would be more put out if the success of Night Vale wasn't so well earned. It's very good. Oh, and Valerie says that she can see Sarah's new artwork behind me. Yes, of course you can. You can see, okay, this is complicated because the angle that I have on the scene behind me is reversed. So I always have to do this weird pointing thing. This is Sarah's Ray, which is great. And this is Sarah's disaffected Black Widow from Civil War. Not from Civil War, from Winter Soldier, which I just adore. And between them, you can see Lily's little flame princess from Adventure Time, which I adore, which I just adore. Yes. Good. All right. So let me finish up the intro bit since I already segued into my first question. It's been a busy week. It's been a great week. I also launched the most often requested and most, I guess, long-awaited class that I will possibly ever do, which is the critical reading class. If you haven't yet checked it out, head on over to pointnorthmedia.com, click the services button in the top right, and you will see a link there to the critical reading class, where over the course of 4 weeks, I will introduce students to basically the kind of textual analysis that I do here at Point North, the kind of textual analysis that I've been doing now for, gosh, the better part of a decade, which is troubling and wonderful all at once. Yeah, so it's been busy, but it's been a really great week, and it's been punctuated by storms here in Oklahoma City, which I'm super into, you guys. That's been pretty great. So a good week, but yes, a tiring week. I am ready for the weekend, as though the weekend brought any kind of break at all. Before I get into the questions tonight, I have to acknowledge the drink that I'm going to consume, the drink that I'm going to taste for the first time live here on the show. This, if you can see this is a Dirty Cowboy. This is 2 parts butterscotch schnapps and 1 part Bailey's Irish Cream. This came to us from the pages of the Mockingbird comic by Chelsea Cain, which we discussed recently on Excelsior, which you can also find over at Common Room Radio. It is basically a terrifying concoction, but Chelsea Cain is a genius and Mockingbird is a fantastic comic, and Sarah has been drinking these all week, so I am now into this, I guess, for experimental purposes. I apologize for the clinking of ice if this is disturbing your listening experience. I know that really what you come to me for is audio fidelity and thereafter content, so I apologize for the clinking of ice here, but let's give this a shot. That is poison. That is actual, oh my God. It was super sweet, and then after a moment, there was another wave of sweetness. This is poison. This is a terrible thing. Do not consume this drink unless you like your drinks super sweet, I guess, which maybe you do. All right, let me see here. Yes, Dirty Cowboy, says Angela Lurie. And you may be able to hear Sarah laughing in the background because she's in the other room as this live broadcast is happening. She says, it's a delicious, tasty ice cream drink. I suppose it is. I suppose that it is. Aaron says that he loves Mockingbird Volume 2, which is great to hear. I think that Chelsea Cain has received a lot of praise for the first volume of Mockingbird, but the second is generally, I think, a little less popular. It's certainly less ambitious, but it is so fun. I can't recommend that highly enough. It's just lovely. Sophia says, I really like regular cowboys. I haven't tried them dirty. You probably should. I guess I can say no more than that. Yes, good. Valerie says, I don't know what I did before podcasts. Oh yeah, read more books. Reading books is pretty good, but listening to podcasts, that's also pretty good. And the difference is that you can do dishes while you listen to podcasts. I guess audiobooks are basically long podcasts, right? That's where we are now. That's the media landscape in which we find ourselves. Let's launch into the questions, because a bunch of you tweeted, excuse me, the Dirty Cowboy is doing me dirty already. A bunch of you tweeted questions using the hashtag PointNorthQs, and I have some really great topics to discuss, starting with Cuppy Roleplay Wonk, who this is at CuppyRP, who asked, will you ever cover anything Haruki Murakami as a book seminar? And I have to confess, the only Haruki Murakami book that I have heard of is, I don't even know how you're supposed to pronounce it, Q-Teen-84, 1Q84, I don't know. It's a 3-volume series anyway, which I have heard compared to the works of Umberto Eco, of whom I am an enormous fan. So I am very into that idea. I'm very interested to read that and perhaps do a seminar series about it. I know that Murakami is an extremely well-regarded Japanese author who seems to have synthesized a kind of odd blend of 20th century French philosophy and a kind of road-weary Americana, and these are both things which appeal to me a great deal, and those things fused through a Japanese perspective into Japanese novels. I'm super into that, so it's not that I never would, it's just that I haven't yet read any of his work, so I'm yeah, definitely open to that possibility in the future. And now there is a thunderstorm outside. This is pretty good, you guys. Thank you for joining me here on this Friday evening. Jack Rossiter Munley on Twitter, that's a great name, Jack, by the way, asked me, any thoughts on the Mission Impossible films, both differences between 1 and 3 and 4 and 5, and as an adaptation of the TV show? I have to say, I have seen definitely 3, maybe 4 of the Mission Impossible films, and as a child, I watched a decent amount of the Mission Impossible TV show, and I have never paused in my consideration either of the movies or the TV show to formulate a critical opinion. I enjoy them. The movies are, I think, very deft. They're appropriately ambitious. They're enormously well constructed. That was the thing that always struck me about the Mission Impossible movies, was just that they were kind of journeyman movies. They set out to do something fairly elemental and did it really rather well. And as you know, if you've been listening to me talk about stories for more than 5 minutes, that is something of which I'm extremely appreciative. I definitely respect that journeyman approach to storytelling. So I can definitely think, I can imagine a time when I will go back and critically reappraise the Mission Impossible movies, but I'm afraid that right now I don't really have a critical perspective on them besides enjoying them, and I haven't seen one in a good long time. I'm saying that I've seen 3, maybe 4. I've definitely seen the first 2. I think I saw 3, and I think I maybe saw 5. I think 4 was perhaps the one that I hadn't seen. And I know what Jack's referring to in the break between 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 5, but I haven't really analyzed that difference yet. So, yes, yes. Aaron is saying they have made 8 Fast and Furious movies, so I suppose 4 of the technically proficient MI is not that shocking. 5 Mission Impossible movies so far. I'm also very curious about Fast and Furious. Or The Fast and the Furious. Fast, Furious Fastness. I don't know, whatever they're going to name the next one. I am super into the naming convention of the Fast and the Furious movies, by the way, because I find it absurd and kind of glorious in its willfulness. The Fate of the Furious for the 8th movie, the F8 of the Furious, which I don't think they actually did on the movie posters, but I think that was a wasted opportunity. I'm definitely fascinated by that series and by the way that it develops, again, its own mythology. It kind of builds itself out from a fairly simple elemental story into something much more ambitious. I'm kind of into that, yes. Let me see here. Oh, yeah, we're talking about Echo here. I see reference made here to Foucault's Pendulum, which is one of my favorites. Princess Ostrich, can we please do the Foucault Pendulum? Yes, we definitely can. Foucault's Pendulum was on an early seminar shortlist that I had that went to a public vote and wasn't, unfortunately, selected. But yes, it is only a matter of time until I do Foucault's Pendulum by Umberto Eco in a seminar series. Basically, the 2 books that I'm going to have to push through, the 2 books that I think are never going to be voted for by the seminar listening public, but which I want to do anyway, are Foucault's Pendulum and The Crying of Lot 49 by Pynchon. That's another fantastic and not entirely dissimilar book, I guess. I'd like to cover both of those. Yeah. Okay, let me see here. Such a busy chat tonight. 30 of you here tonight. This is wonderful. Skipa's here too. Faster Furiouser, says Skipa. Tamara begs me to speak up because she can't hear me over her puppy snoring. I apologize for that. I guess I can get a little closer to the mic. I can just, get up on this mic and do the rest of the podcast like I'm a late night DJ. I guess that's the thing that I could do. Let me put you to sleep, though, is the problem. Or have some other experience. Yes, good. Sophia says, I've only seen Furious 7 and I refuse to watch any of the others because with no context, it was a work of art. Sophia, I can only applaud that strenuously and enthusiastically and believe me sincerely. That is a great approach to a series like that. Absolutely. Giggly Jiggly Corbin asks me, Corbin GJ on Twitter, who is, of course, wonderful. And if you listen to Porch Club, then you know that his name is a response to the unending conundrum of GJ Corbin's real name. But Giggly Jiggly Corbin, as he is this week, asks, what are your thoughts on the canonness of deleted scenes, especially those cut for non-narrative reasons like cutting runtime? I guess one of the things that you have to bear in mind when you're dealing with issues of canonicity is that canonicity is never going to be an inclusive, exclusive kind of deal. It is never going to be a yes-no binary kind of condition. It is not the case, I guess, with very few exceptions. It is not the case that canonicity is a simple yes-no proposition. Things are canon or not canon. Things have a variable quality of canonicity. And I was introduced to this early, of course, through the Star Wars Extended Universe, which is fascinating in its complexity with regard to its approach to canonicity. I guess my system is things which are in the movie, that's like an A-tier canon. That is absolutely canonical. If it is in the movie as it was released, a theatrical cut of the movie or the theatrical cut on DVD, those things are simply canon. If there is a deleted scene that was included in an extended cut of the movie, and I'm thinking in particular of The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit with this regard, or in this regard, then that would be like a B-tier canonicity, that they're not quite as canonical as the stuff that made the original cut, but they're pretty good. They're pretty solid. And unless they conflict outright with something in the original theatrical cut of the movie, then you can pay close attention to them. If there is a deleted scene on the DVD that is not included in any kind of extended cut, that is, it is not stitched into the fabric of the movie, then that's C-tier canonicity. It's probably canon unless it conflicts with something in the established text or your interpretation of something in the established text. I don't think that you necessarily get to refer to a deleted scene to quash someone else's interpretation, to argue a point in conflict with the primary text itself. And then I suppose from there you can go down to D-tier canonicity would be original shooting scripts, would be storyboards, would be, you know, that kind of thing. And then an E-tier canonicity would be original intent, the, you know, the original pitch, the original outline, or the series Bible. That kind of extra textual material, particularly that kind of material that is always intended to be extra textual, should never trump actual textual canonical information, as far as I'm concerned. So that's roughly how I approach it. But generally speaking, you'll find that deleted scenes are with the core narrative. They should be anyway, because the reason that scenes should be cut is that they are inessential. And if they are inessential, then they don't change the arc of the story overall. That unfortunately isn't always true, particularly the extended cut of the first Hobbit movie. I'm quite slavish about my commitment to the extended cuts of all of the Peter Jackson Tolkien movies, all 3 Lord of the Rings movies, all 3 Hobbit movies, because I just think that the extended cuts are better. I think they're fuller. I think they're more realized. I think they are closer both to Peter Jackson's vision as director and also, coincidentally, to Tolkien's vision as author. But the first Hobbit movie suffers so much from the cuts that were required for the theatrical version that I basically have declared that specific version non-canonical. I will take the extended cut that's available on the DVD over the theatrical version every single time, because there really are revisions, particularly to the character of Thranduil and most specifically to his motivations. It is, I guess maybe that's not the first one, maybe that's the second one I'm thinking of, but it's important that Thranduil's character is properly motivated. No, I guess it is the first one, because it's the flashback to Erebor that we get. I was right the first time. Stick with me, you guys. I never make mistakes. Yes. Let me see here. We have some discussion of black cats. Anna Keefe has a thought. Totally unrelated, but how do you all feel about black cats? Asks Anna. I'm not a pet person, is the thing. I can appreciate black cats, and I'm certainly not one of these, you know, slavish anti-pet people who looks down upon you if you have a cat. I just think that cats are better suited to, you know, the care of people who are not me. And in that, they share a commonality with all other animals. I can respect pet ownership. I value pet ownership, but pet ownership is perhaps not for me. So black cats, pretty cool. I think if you're going to have a cat, a black cat is a great direction to go in. Yes, there's definitely a lot of I see here that I'm being mocked for my long list of something, but I'll catch up with what that is in just a moment. Yes, black cats are, I think, the way to go with cats. That's where I would come down on those. Yes. Chris says, you thought you were wrong once, but that was a mistake. That's as far as I go, pretty much. Yeah. Becca Ellis says, I'm super allergic to cats, so I prefer them in a box, being both alive and dead, like little bosses. Here's the interesting thing about Schrodinger's cat that a lot of people don't realize. Schrodinger's cat was a parody. The conceptual notion of a cat in a box that may be alive or dead was actually Schrodinger's response to quantum theory, where he was pointing out how absurd quantum theory is, because it is impossible for a cat to be both alive and dead. And I'm fascinated by points that are made by thinkers, by scientists, by writers, certainly, which are adopted into the popular culture as the counterproof of themselves, as it were. Schrodinger's cat is used now, I guess, 99 times out of 100 as a genuine descriptor of quantum theory, as a genuine descriptor of the mutability of the wave function, you know, whether or not the wave function will collapse on the side of the cat being alive or the wave function will collapse on the side of the cat being dead. This is what we use Schrodinger's cat to illustrate, and yet Schrodinger's intent was very different. I'm yeah, super into that kind of subversion of expectation in that regard. Let me see here. I saw an interesting, Aaron asks, this is the interesting question. If you were swept by a storm into Oz and managed not to murder someone with a farmhouse, who would you team up with? The problem with Oz is that the power structure is in no way explicit. I'm not at all sure. Because, okay, here's the thing. Dorothy is walking along and she bumps into the Scarecrow, and the Scarecrow is guarding a field because that is what scarecrows do. But who owns that field? Are we supposed to infer from that there was some kind of agrarian culture? Certainly an agrarian culture that exists outside of, you know, the Munchkins. Clearly this is some other, because otherwise, presumably, and follow me on this, if the Scarecrow were created by the Munchkins, then the Scarecrow would be Munchkin-sized, presumably, would reflect the thing which would frighten away the crows from the crops. So there is clearly some kind of agrarian community of humans in Oz that we don't explore at all. Who created the Tin Man? And I'm thinking more of the movie here. I have actually read a few of the Oz novels, so I'm trying not to let my knowledge of L. Frank Baum kind of leach into this discussion. But there is obviously some kind of social hierarchy. There is obviously some kind of feudalistic or quasi-feudalistic system present in Oz. I would want to know about that. I need more information, Aaron, is what I'm saying, before I pick a side. I need to know, where are the entrenched power structures? You know, what is the Oz version of the patriarchy? Because if my goal is to return home, I'm probably going to side with them. I'm not going to side with them. I'm going to raise some flag of revolt and lead the Munchkins in an uprising against the repressors. That would be the better thing to do. Sophia says, one of my favorite terrible movies is Sucker Punch, and the stuff that was deleted to make it PG-13 rather than R unfortunately made the theatrical version not make a lot of sense. That is absolutely true, Sophia. Sucker Punch is a fascinating film. This is Zack Snyder's, gosh, how would you even describe it? Kind of fever dream about strippers fighting kaiju, I guess, is as close as I can get. It's fascinating. It's deep. It is surprisingly complex, particularly in the uncut version, because the uncut version preserves some of the mythology and preserves some of the power and punch of Sucker Punch. Yes, that's a great example of a movie that is basically torn apart by the edit that was required by the studio in order to get it a PG-13 rating. Yeah. Let me catch. Oh, YouTube just scrolled. YouTube does that from time to time, and then I lose everything. Okay. Aaron says, Alistair talks advanced physics, take a drink. That is not a drinking, not a part of the drinking game that is going to result in you getting terribly inebriated, I have to say. I am a big fan of physics. I am like a hard sci-fi fan, but as Emily says here, oh, Alistair, you are so beautifully nerdy. It's true. It's true. I can't deny it and wouldn't even if I could. Yes. Yes, good. Okay, let me take a look here at the next question. Oh, Gigi Corbin had another question. You're able to greenlight any Marvel/DC movie as long as the protagonist is a relatively obscure hero. Who do you choose? Well, relatively obscure is the metric here, and that's a little tricky. I must admit, when I first read this question, my immediate thought was of not a hero, but actually a villain. I am kind of into Count Nefaria. Count Nefaria is a vampiric character in the Marvel Universe, not an actual vampire. He is simply an ionically powered supervillain who first appears early in the Avengers. I believe that he was created by Stan Lee and Don Heck, but he shows up in issue number 2 of X-Men, and X-Men is my jam. X-Men is my series, still remains my series, even though I have moved on to the Avengers. Before I ever read, Spider-Man, before I ever cared about solo heroes, and certainly before I was interested in the cosmic side of the Marvel Universe, I read X-Men and loved X-Men. So as unpopular as it is, if I'm thinking about a hero, I guess I'm thinking about one of the X-Men heroes. I'm thinking about one of the X-Men heroes that has been underserved by the X-Men movies that we have had to date. You guys, I kind of want a Gambit movie. But by saying that I want a Gambit movie, I'm not actually saying that I want a Gambit movie. What I'm saying is that I want a Gambit and Rogue movie, because Rogue is maybe my favorite X-Man. Rogue is just brilliant. Rogue is a mutant who has the ability to absorb other mutants' powers through touch. If you've seen the original X-Men movies, then you know Rogue because she was played by Anna Paquin. But that is a very limited version of that character, because in the comics, Rogue showed up first as a villain and absorbed the powers of Ms. Marvel, Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel later. But she absorbed her powers to such a degree that those powers stuck. So Rogue can now fly and has super strength and also kind of has the voice of Carol Danvers inside of her. And she can't touch anyone, because if she touches anyone, she absorbs their powers and harms them. So she and Gambit, who is this kind of Bayou Lothario, who just a terrible dude in real life. You would never want to meet Gambit in real life, but he is this southern charmer who can kinetically charge small objects. He uses playing cards most often. And they have this heartbreaking romance where they are clearly in love with each other, clearly destined for each other, and yet can never touch each other. And it's kind of lovely, and I'm kind of super into that. So I would go for a Gambit and Rogue movie. That would be the Marvel character that I that I would choose. And as Sophia points out here, the IMDb page is still up for the Channing Tatum Gambit movie. Yes, I'd like it. I'm into it. Channing Tatum could definitely play the hell out of Remy LeBeau. I'm kind of into that idea, but I don't think that that movie is ever going to happen. Fox owns Gambit as a part of the X-Men franchise, and I can't see them ever doing it. I can't see them ever creating the kind of movie that Gambit and ideally Rogue would best serve, because it would be effectively a romance. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for that story. I'm looking for the romance between Rogue and Gambit, and it's just never going to happen. Yeah. Gene says, I want my Gambit lanky and scruffy. Yeah, well, 90s Gambit was my Gambit too. I mean, you know, with the pink body armor and the whole deal. Yeah, that's what I want. Oh, Aaron has maybe even a better answer. Aaron says, I still vote Jubilee, mole rat vampire queen. She's rad and hangs out with Hellcat. Okay, well, the vampire thing I would maybe lose, but does a mole babe eat chili fries? Jubilee was a huge character for me in the 1990s. So yes, Jubilee would make a great character, a great entry-level character actually to the X-Men side of the Marvel Universe. Yeah, I'm into that. Good. Okay. Oh, Jennifer says, oh, Rogue and Gambit, stop, with a crying emoji. I know, guys, I know. Tom says, I always thought Channing was too muscly for Gambit, which I think is a completely fair point, except that, you know, Gambit already has like the sculpted muscles on the bodysuit, and Channing Tatum just wouldn't need those. I guess you just spray him with spandex or whatever, and that would do the trick. Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Let me move on to the next question. Gosh, I'm already halfway through my appointed hour, guys. This is terrible. Wonderful. Tom Codex Caster on Twitter says, sorry, I can't watch live tonight. I'll be ballroom dancing. That isn't a joke. Tom, I would never have assumed for a second that was a joke. My question is, pineapple on pizza. Thoughts? Pineapple on pizza is not a terrible thing. I would never eat it by choice. I would never choose a pineapple adorned pizza. I would never choose a pizza that had been, you know, augmented with the fruity presence of pineapple over basically any other kind of pizza. I am not really in that, you know, salty and sweet camp, that ham and pineapple kind of deal. So I don't like it. It's not that I don't like it. If you offered me a slice of pizza and I was hungry, I would eat that pizza with pineapple and everything, but I would never choose it over literally any other kind of pizza. So that's pretty much where I am. And I hope that your ballroom dancing worked out very well. Aaron Sinner on Twitter. This is so good, you guys. I'm going to take a moment to copy this link and paste it into the YouTube chat, because Aaron Sinner has done something genuinely wonderful. I hope that works, and I hope that you can get to this. This is what Aaron asked was, have you listened to this, and linked to it. Thoughts? This is an episode of Story in Star Wars that Aaron recorded, dedicated to the Star Wars Holiday Special. It is a thing of absolute absurd beauty. I love the sincerity with which Aaron approaches this. I've only listened to, I should say, maybe the first, I guess a little more than half of it. That was all the time that I had before I had to start this live broadcast. It is great. I am enchanted by the Star Wars Holiday Special. I really am. It is such a stupid idea. It is so misguided. It is so underprepared, underconceived, underexecuted in every possible way that it has become a thing of weird beauty. It is such a terrible idea that it's become kind of a fantastic idea. If you've never seen the Star Wars Holiday Special, I was going to say you definitely should. That's probably not true. Go watch the first 10 minutes of the Star Wars Holiday Special and you will definitely get the idea. Like, there are details that you will miss, but you will get like the tone, you will get the aesthetic, you will get what they were going for on, I think, ABC in the early 1980s. It's just disastrous, but Aaron gives it the full Story in Star Wars treatment. Aaron, you're a gentleman and a scholar, and yeah, I'm very appreciative. It's a really great episode. I'll have to retweet that. It's just incredible. Let me catch up here with YouTube chat. Have I missed any questions? No, I don't think so. I think I've been moving so fast through these questions that you guys haven't even had time. Yes. It's just brilliant. It's just brilliant. Good. Okay, let me see. Suzanne asked a great question. This is at Suzaboos, which, by the way, is an excellent Twitter handle. Suzanne, I'm very appreciative of that. Can you recommend any fantasy comics? And the answer is kind of no. Fantasy is a weirdly underrepresented subgenre in comic books. There should be tons of excellent fantasy comics out there, and there really, really aren't. I mean, the Conan comics and the Red Sonja comics were interesting for a while. Dynamite just resurrected just a few years ago, resurrected the Red Sonja comic and then canceled it too. So I don't even think that's in publication anymore. The two heavy hitters in fantasy comics are ElfQuest, which is pretty much straight up kind of slightly fairy tale inclined fantasy, but solid fantasy. And of course, Jeff Smith's Bone, which actually kind of transcends the notion of fantasy comics. If you are a comics reader, then you need to read Bone. It is just preposterously good. And comparisons have been made between Bone and The Lord of the Rings. And let's face it, comparisons are made between every fantasy story in The Lord of the Rings. But Bone is one of those few stories which actually kind of justifies the comparison. Bone is magnificent. It follows the story of three cartoon bones, effectively, who leave Boneville and find themselves in a conventional fantasy kingdom. And it follows the story from there. I can't recommend it highly enough. Go read the whole thing. You can now buy the Bone Omnibus. I think there's even a one-volume edition, which must be, yay thick. But I think there's a one-volume Bone Omnibus that you can go and track down. It is just great. The only other fantasy comic which springs to mind is Rich Burlew's webcomic Order of the Stick, which you can find at, gosh, his production company is Giants in the Playground. I think it's giantitp.com. I think that is the URL for Order of the Stick. And this started off as basically a funny comic about D&D. It's basically poking fun at D&D and the conventions of Dungeons and Dragons throughout its run. And the first, I guess, 40 installments of this comic are super simple, and the art style is nothing to write home about. The comedy's pretty good. Like, the jokes are fairly sharp, but it's also fairly conventional. And Rich Burlew is now, I don't know, 1,100 pages into this comic, and it has also taken on this huge mythic weight. It has just expanded and expanded and expanded, and every time you think that he has gone as far as he could possibly go, it goes still further. And we are now pretty much, I guess, in the final act of the Order of the Stick. He does have an end in mind for this webcomic. So I definitely recommend go right back to the beginning, read the whole thing. It is worth your time. It is worth your investment. The characters are sharp. They're acutely drawn. The comedy is great, but ultimately what trumps even the comedy is the storytelling that's evident here. There is a story of epic grandeur that is underlying what seems at first to be a very simple D&D parody webcomic. I can't recommend it highly enough. Jennifer asks, any chance of a Point North one-shot on the Dark Crystal since Netflix is making a new series? Yes. Yes, there's a very good chance. Yes, within the next month, I would say. After the success of the Labyrinth one-shot that I did, I was already talking about doing a Dark Crystal one-shot. I find the Dark Crystal to be a genuinely fascinating, genuinely ambitious, genuinely weird movie, and I would really like to talk about it. And there is no better time, I guess, now that Netflix has announced this ongoing series, which I find fascinating. I need more information about that series before I make a judgment about it, basically. But I'm definitely into the idea. Yeah. Let me see. Valerie Knight says, new Klingons are strange looking. Are we talking, Valerie, are we talking about the new Star Trek Discovery trailer? Is that what we're talking about? Because if so, yeah, they're really weird looking. And I have my doubts. I still have my doubts, you guys, about Star Trek Discovery. I want it to be good. There are two things about this trailer that give me unalloyed joy. There are two things that make me think, oh, hell yes, this is the Star Trek that I want. The first is the presence of Michelle Yeoh. She's just so extraordinary. I love her as Captain. I am into this idea. This is going to be so good. And then within the trailer, she gets to say the line, Starfleet doesn't shoot first. And that is of vital importance. If we are really telling the story of Starfleet, if we are really, really talking about the Federation, if we're really talking about Gene Roddenberry's ideals of human perfectibility, if we believe that we can just be better, then I am into that. If this is a J.J. Abrams style fantasy adventure, which is Star Trek with the serial numbers filed off, if it is observing the proper nouns of Star Trek without actually understanding the heart of Star Trek, then I'm somewhat less interested. But let's be honest, I'm going to watch the thing anyway. Yeah. Yes. Good. Oh, we're talking about gaming here. Yes. Oh, I guess I just broke the news to Angela Lurie about the new Dark Crystal series. Yes. Dark Crystal, the series coming from Netflix, I guess. I'm looking forward to it. I need a little more information. But that movie is really, really interesting. Yeah, good. Let me see here. Suzanne also asked me, I'm seeing C.S. Lewis on stage this weekend. What would J.R.R. Tolkien on stage be like? How would you dramatize his life for the stage? I wouldn't dramatize J.R.R. Tolkien's life for the stage, because his life is basically retelling the same story over and over and over until he dies. That is not to suggest that J.R.R. Tolkien's work is not of obviously incredible value, but he would go back and start retelling the same story over and over and over, which is why, despite his enormous prolificity, we have very few books by J.R.R. Tolkien, but we have this 12-volume series, The History of Middle-earth, and we have The Children of Húrin, and we have Unfinished Tales, and we have the forthcoming Beren and Luthien book that is coming out, like, I don't know, next week. It's coming out, I think, on the 1st of June. So the work that Tolkien didn't finish far exceeds the work that he did finish in quantity, if not quality. But what I would love is to get someone who can do a really good Tolkien impression and have them simply read. Have them read. I want them to read the entirety of The Hobbit. I mean, that's an 11-hour proposition, so maybe not actually that, but there is material out there. J.R.R. Tolkien did record himself reading. There were radio interviews, and there were just lectures that he gave, and live readings that he gave. I think if you go to YouTube and search, you can actually find his reading of Chapter 5 of The Hobbit, Riddles in the Dark, which is magnificent. It's just magnificent. He is a great reader. So what I would want is, okay, there are two things that I would want. The first is just an actor playing Tolkien, reading his work, an actor who really understood, an actor who really cared about Tolkien and who really invested in the process. I would love that. The other thing that I would love is some kind of dramatized version of the arguments between J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis about fantasy fiction. It would culminate in the writing of the epic poem Mythopoeia, which Tolkien wrote for Lewis as a paean to the importance of fantasy. He wrote this poem to basically make the case for fantasy. And Lewis was so convinced by this poem that he converted to Christianity, which was pretty great. That was a major part of Tolkien's argument, was that the creative influence descends from God into us, but we refract it, that the creative impulse within us is itself sacred. And obviously, I'm kind of in line with that argument. But it also completely changed the way that Lewis thought about fantasy fiction, thought about fiction in general for the rest of his career. And it led to most of Lewis's great nonfiction writing. It led to his study and analysis of criticism. If you haven't read either, Tolkien's On Fairy Stories and Mythopoeia, the poem, and Lewis's On Criticism, you definitely need to read those things, because those things will change your life if you haven't read them already. I can't recommend them highly enough. So that is what I would actually like, is a kind of My Dinner with Andre, My Dinner with Lewis, I suppose, where J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis sit down and talk about fantasy fiction. That is what I want, and I would also like to write it, please. That would be great. Good. Conversion by story, says Becca. Best conversion ever. You know, my throat's getting a little bad, so I'm going to take another sip of this Dirty Cowboy. I am 40 minutes into this live broadcast. This is my second sip, which tells you how good a Dirty Cowboy is. That's terrible. It's genuinely terrible, you guys. It does kind of taste like melted ice cream. Like, I can see where Sarah's coming from with this, but boy howdy, that's not good. Okay. Yes, I'm playing the drinking game now. Oh, Angela asks, and actually echoes a question that I got from Jean on Twitter, both asking about Twin Peaks, the return of Twin Peaks. You guys, it has been a long time coming. It's been 25 years coming. Twin Peaks is about to return, and I am honestly incredibly excited. I am fanboyishly excited for the return of Twin Peaks. Twin Peaks is such a fascinating series. David Lynch and Mark Frost wrote the original series as basically an avant-garde experiment. What can we get away with on television? What can we do on television that will really push the boundaries of audience expectation? And they were doing this in a pre-DVR age. There was no way that people were going to keep up with the complexities of Twin Peaks as it was airing, and ultimately it turned out that many of them didn't. Then David Lynch and Mark Frost pretty much leave Twin Peaks, and they turn it over to supporting writers, Peyton and Engels, Harley Peyton and Robert Engels, I believe, who wrote the bulk of the second season, which is terrible. It's just really bad and descends into it becomes the kind of thing that Twin Peaks was in its first season parodying. But then, crucially, Lynch returns and helms the finale of the season, and it is brilliant. And he actively undercuts much of the world building that took place through the course of the second season. I adore Twin Peaks. I love Twin Peaks. It is not by any means a completely successful, comprehensively successful series, but I am so enamored with it, so enamored with its world building, so enamored of its audacity, so completely fascinated by the core mystery that is presented and the way that that mystery is examined. I just love it. I'm super excited for Lynch to return with the new season of Twin Peaks, which I guess is going to be season 3, Twin Peaks, the limited series. I will definitely have thoughts on it. There was a time when I was thinking about podcasting it, but I just don't have space in my schedule for that. But there will definitely be, I'll tell you this, there will definitely be thoughts on next week's Point North Q&A. That's going to happen. But there will also, I think, probably be some kind of one-shot or one-shot adjacent thing happening right at the end of the series. So I'm looking forward to that very, very much. I am into it. Yes. Okay. Yes, as Angela says, Lynch threw out most of the already written script when he arrived to direct the series finale. He absolutely did, and apparently improvised a lot of the finale. Lynch would just shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot until he had something that he could work with, and that is fascinating. And then, of course, with Fire Walk With Me, where we get an entirely different perspective on Twin Peaks, which is a perspective which I adore. It's yes, Twin Peaks, not always good, but always relentlessly fascinating. Anna Keefe asks here in the YouTube chat, you're going to do BSG, right? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's only ever been a question of when, not if, with Battlestar Galactica. It will definitely happen. Battlestar Galactica was one of the series that I was talking about with Elizabeth and Sarah and Vinton when their series Mighty Fine Shindig studying Firefly came to an end. We were talking about the possibility of launching a new BSG series then, but it's a much bigger commitment, and we just didn't have space in our schedules for that, you know, year-long process. But yeah, sooner or later, I'm definitely going to talk about Battlestar Galactica. The 3 big sci-fi series that I want to discuss are Farscape and Babylon 5 and Battlestar Galactica. That's pretty much where I am. Yeah. Also, Stargate, says Becca. Becca, if you haven't yet heard There's No Place Like Terra, produced by Nixie and Grace, then I highly recommend it. It is an episode-by-episode rewatch of Stargate. They are lovely and smart and insightful and also very, very funny and charming. So I can't recommend that podcast highly enough. There's No Place Like Terra, Terra. You can find that on iTunes. I think you can find it on Stitcher and Google Play too. You can definitely check that out. It is a long series already. I guess they're, gosh, more than 100 episodes in, maybe 115, 120 episodes in. They're a long way into Stargate SG-1. So yes, and unfortunately, Grace hasn't seen the show before, and Nixie has, and Nixie does not like Stargate Universe. So I'm at some point going to have to talk with her about that. I guess some point just make my case for Stargate Universe as the best Stargate. Stargate Universe is a really good series, you guys. And also watchable. Okay, Tom is asking, wait, what was the Stargate podcast? He said, There's No Place Like Terra. There's No Place Like Terra by Nixie and Grace. Find it on iTunes. Go check it out. I think it is possibly Terra Podcast. Let me double check this before I send you awry. It is something like that on Twitter. TerraCast. I'm going to try Terra Podcast. It's Terra Podcast. I'm so good, you guys. I got that completely right. First shot, swish. Terra Podcast on Twitter. They're just great. I highly recommend both of them. Yes, good. Yes, I've got a couple of co-hosts for Babylon 5, says Anna. Yes, Tom, certainly. Yes. Tom and Angela have both volunteered themselves. I hope I'm not breaking any trusts here when I say that Tom and Angela have both volunteered themselves for a Babylon 5 podcast. Again, question of when and not if. I would love to do a Babylon 5 series. That show still remains true to my heart and is still my favorite sci-fi show ever. I talk a lot about Star Trek. Obviously, I'm super into DS9. DS9 is a great series. I'm super into Stargate SG-1, less into Atlantis, super into Stargate Universe. I love Farscape. Babylon 5 for me is where it is at. And yeah, I will definitely do a Babylon 5 podcast at some point. Good. And oh, Fringe. Yes, yes. Jennifer says, but in lieu of a Fringe pod, I will take Farscape pod. Fringe is also magnificent. I would love to do an in-depth Fringe podcast because I also haven't heard a really good Fringe podcast. There may be one out there. It's been a long time since I've looked, but Fringe is a great series that I can't recommend highly enough. So definitely watch that too. Let me move on here. Sarah asks me a loaded question here in the YouTube chat. Have you preached the gospel of carboys yet? I don't think that I have. I don't think that I've talked about carboys at all on the internet. Hey, you guys, Carboys. Carboys is a series that was produced over at Polygon.com by Griffin McElroy of, you know, the McElroys, and Nick Robinson, who is an editor at Polygon. It is theoretically a series where they play the video game BeamNG.Drive, which is supposed to be a very simple kind of systemic driving game. This is a game which seeks to emulate the physics of real-world driving, but because Griffin and Nick are mad geniuses, because they are brilliant, because they find narrative even when no narrative is present, over the course of, I think, 38 episodes, they build a dazzlingly rich narrative. They defeat ancient, incalculable, eldritch evils. They overcome huge obstacles. They make a lot of really stupid jokes. Griffin says Nick a lot. Guys, definitely go and watch Carboys. If you're at all interested in video games, and not even necessarily video games, if you're interested in people talking about things and just being dumb and funny and awesome, go watch Carboys on YouTube. The finale aired, I think, last night or maybe 2 nights ago now, and it is the perfect, spontaneous culmination of everything that they've been doing in Carboys. They didn't plan the climax, they didn't plan the finale when they went into it, but things happened which made it clear that this was the end of their show. So they respected those things and ended their show. And I have an enormous amount of respect for that. So definitely, definitely check out Carboys. In fact, go to McElroyshows.com and just follow everything that the McElroys do, because mad geniuses, mad geniuses. All right. Yes, good. Oh, GJ Corbin says, oh no, it doesn't work for GJ Corbin. I've tried multiple McElroy stuff before, but never enjoyed it. Am I broken? He says he's tried the main series, which I guess is MBMBaM, Adventure Zone, and the episode you linked about Fallout 4, and none of it. You know what? Nothing is for everyone. Nothing works for every single person on Earth. Comedy in particular is very specific. If it doesn't work for you, GJ, don't waste another moment. Move on with your life. Find things that do work for you. Find things that delight you, and pursue those things with an eager heart and swift feet. That's the best advice that I can give you. He says, I will give them one more show. Maybe do that too. Sarah will never rest until you give them one more show. The McElroys are just mad geniuses. Let me see here. I have a question from Elizabeth Stevens, which is perhaps of personal interest to her. She asks, you have a month off from all obligations to replenish yourself and recharge. What do you do? I road trip. Road trip is definitely a thing. Road trip vacation is my preferred form of vacation. So I would take a good long road trip. The road trip that I have in mind right now from here in Oklahoma City would be following Route 66 west all the way out to California, and then taking the PCH all the way up to Washington State, all the way up to Seattle. That feels like that would be an epic and appropriately American kind of road trip. It's the kind of road trip that Neil Gaiman would approve of, I guess, is what I'm saying. And we're fortunate enough to have friends and listeners and wonderful people all over the country. So I would like to do that trip, travel west out across the desert from Oklahoma all the way to California, and then all the way up the Pacific coast, just stopping and meeting people and going to awesome little diners. I'm a huge fan of diner culture and diner food and diners in general, and just experiencing more of this country, because I've been in this country now for 7.5 years, and I feel as though I've only experienced a fragment of it, which I don't think is actually true. I've traveled around a fair amount. I've lived in Ohio, and I've lived in New York, and I've lived in Oklahoma, and I've traveled between those states, and I've spent some time in St. Louis, and I've spent some time in Indianapolis, and I've spent some time in Jacksonville, Florida, and I've kind of seen a little bit of what this country has to offer, but not the grandeur of it, not the breadth of it, not the America of it. So first off, a road trip vacation. Then I would read more, and I would play more video games. I would immerse myself in narrative again, because I just don't get to do those things as much as I would like. Time is constrained. So I don't get to read as much as I would like. I don't get to play video games as much as I would like. And again, playing video games here, not in the distraction sense, but in the actively engaging with narrative sense. And then honestly, Elizabeth, you know me, 2 weeks into this month-long hiatus, I would start a podcast. I would think of something that I really wanted to talk about, and I would start a podcast. And I would say, no, this isn't like really a podcast. This is just a thing that I really want to talk about. And hey, if I'm going to talk about it anyway, I may as well have a microphone in front of me, right? I should just put this out on the internet. That's the thing that I should do. The truth of it is that I love the work that I get to do. I love talking about stories. I love communicating with all of you. I love discovering stories together. The kind of seminar format that we've adopted for Storms on the Way and There and Back Again. This is my favorite thing. Getting to do this and have these conversations with all of you is just wonderful. So I would inevitably end up doing this again. It has, it's fair to say, been a pretty busy year. It has so far been wonderful, but challenging and maybe just a little emotionally exhausting. So I'm not saying that I wouldn't appreciate a week off. A week off would be fantastic, but after a couple weeks, yeah, I'd be itching to podcast again. I'd start the Babylon 5 podcast is what I'd do. Or, hey, maybe some other podcast idea that I have in my back pocket that I'm just waiting to talk about publicly. I think this is now maybe 6 Point North Q&As in a row where I have teased this announcement, and I'm still not ready to make it, you guys. I adore you all, I promise. As soon as I am ready, I will do it. Let me pick up here. As Tom says, diners, drive-ins, and denouements. Yeah, that's pretty much it. That would be it, actually. Yeah, I would do like a road trip documentary series where I could talk about the stories of America as I cross this great nation, with, of course, Elizabeth by my side, because there is no greater analyst of story, no greater mind, no greater heart than Elizabeth Stevens. So it would be wonderful to do that with her. Yes. Kate is asking, when will the class packets go out? I need that fantasy list. Last night's class was so fun. Kate, thank you so much for coming to last night's class. It was a blast. The packets are going to go out either tonight or early tomorrow morning, though the storm didn't disrupt, I guess, the storm, as though it is a singular thing. Though inclement weather did not disrupt last night's class too much, it has been disrupting my opportunity to upload class files today. So I have them pretty much ready to go, and we can do that thing. Yes. Good. Okay. Let me see here. Scrolling back. You need to go across I-70 through the mountains, says Anna. I-70. I don't know American highways. Is that like a Colorado road? Because I'm super into that. Colorado is in fact very high on my list of destinations right now. Yes. Good. Okay. Sarah says, I've lived here 30 years, traveled all over, and still feel like I've not seen much. This, I think, is the problem. I just want to see everything. I want to see everything that this nation has to offer, and Canada too, and Mexico too. I just want to explore and see the bigness of it. Bigness, a perfectly cromulent word. Okay. Oh, wow. Gene says, please consult me before road trip in Colorado. Do not effing take I-70. It is the worst. Perhaps there are parts of I-70 which are beautiful and parts of I-70 which are less beautiful. It's possible. Gene, I will definitely contact you when I'm heading to Colorado. That, I hope, will be this year. I hope that we're going to be able to take some time in Denver and probably in Boulder too. So if you're anywhere nearby, we will be holding some kind of hangout. And I should say that if you are in the great cities of Kansas City or St. Louis, Missouri, that you should definitely go and check out Elizabeth's Twitter profile. That's twitter.com/LizbethRay555, where she posted a poll. We are going to take a road trip to one of those two cities. I'm going to be honest, you guys, we're going to go visit IKEA. And there are IKEAs in both of those cities because we're going to need to buy some furniture in the next couple of weeks. So we're going to go and do that. But while we are in one of those two cities, we're going to post up in a bar one night, and anyone who wants to come is absolutely invited. And we can just all hang out and drink and talk about stories and talk about Porch Club and talk about podcasting and talk about whatever crosses your mind. So if you are anywhere near Kansas City, or you are anywhere near St. Louis, or you are willing to travel to either of those places to meet and hang out with Elizabeth and I, head on over to twitter.com/LizbethRay555 and vote in her poll that is there, or just, I don't know, tweet at her or speak up in the YouTube chat right now, I guess. Oh, sorry, Kansas City, Kansas, I should say. Yes, yes. Kansas City is driving distance of Lawrence. Yeah, Lawrence is actually where we want to go. And as Elizabeth says here in the YouTube chat, she has never been to an IKEA. It's true. It's true and tragic, but we will rectify that. Yes. IKEAs are so far away in the US, Princess Ostrich. Yes. We basically have 3 choices for an IKEA. We have Dallas, which is about 3 hours south of us. We have Kansas City, which is about 5 hours north of us. And then we have St. Louis, which is about 7 hours northeast of us. We don't want to go to Dallas. Is pretty much what it comes down to. We don't want to go any further south in the hot weather, I guess is what we're saying. We want to go north toward the cooler climes. That's our plan. Yes. And we will, of course, be traveling all across the country every chance that we get, because we both love road trips, and that's pretty great. I am, in fact, out of time. Sarah has asked me here on Twitter, you get to lead a team of D-list Marvel heroes. Which 4 are on your roster? I get to lead the team? That seems disastrous. That seems like someone somewhere has made a very poor decision indeed. D-list Marvel heroes. D-list Marvel heroes. Heroes are tough because Marvel doesn't generally keep a huge roster of heroes. The D-list villains would be really interesting. Do I get to put together like a Thunderbolts? That would be pretty awesome. I could do a really good Thunderbolts. I could do Count Nefaria, the aforementioned Count Nefaria, and his daughter, Madame Mask. That would be really good. Gosh, other D-list heroes. I always wish we'd done more with Toad. From the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. I wish that we had rebranded the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. Honestly, that would be really fun. Stiltman, I guess, maybe. I don't know. I would like to put together a Thunderbolts style team. Thunderbolts is like the Marvel version of Suicide Squad, I suppose. I'd like to put together a Thunderbolts style team composed of D-list villains and then lead them to goodness, and do it really by sitting backwards on a chair a lot and just giving them inspiring speeches. Just saying, look, is this really though the kind of person that you want to be? Here, watch this marathon of Carboys and tell me about goodness and optimism and hope and friendship. That's a thing that I could do. That's a thing that I could really make work. All right. Karen is asking me, let me see here. In fact, Steinbeck on the Great American Pre-Interstate Road Trip is a great counterpoint to American Gods. What are we talking about with Steinbeck? Is that a particular... yes. We're scrolling back. I'm scrolling back through to try and find Karen's. Have you ever read Travels with Charlie? No, I haven't. That is definitely on my list. I should, of course, have known that you were talking about Travels with Charlie from the contextual clues. No, I haven't, but I have heard that the audiobook is extremely good, and that is something that I would definitely want to check out. Yes. All right, guys, I think that is going to do it. That has been our hour. I am going to go and I think give the rest of this dirty cowboy to Sarah. Let me see. It is not growing on me, you guys. It is not growing on me. So I'm going to go and give this to Sarah and then pour, what do they call it? A real drink. And then enjoy the rest of my Friday evening. I hope that you all do the same. Thank you all so much for your support of Point North Media this week. I will be back next week. Next week, we are going to delve into chapters 8 and 9 and episode 4 of American Gods, the novel and the TV show, respectively. Then we are going to take a look at the 3rd chapter of the Fellowship of the Ring, in which we get a hint of the conspiracy that has surrounded Frodo nigh these many years. This is a really great chapter with a lot of great characterization from our favorite hobbits. I can't wait to get into that, and possibly the long-awaited story in Star Wars and There and Back Again bonus episodes. We'll see how this all works out, but I have big plans, you guys, always big plans. Oh, and you should definitely check out Sunday's episode of Excelsior over at commonroomradio.com is our discussion of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, which is a riotously engaging and super fun film that is still somewhat problematic. That's pretty much where I'm going to pigeonhole Guardians Volume 2. It is a really great discussion. Sarah and Vinton are fantastic. You can find that over at commonroomradio.com. And then the following week, we're talking about Jeff Lemire's comic book, Black Hammer. We recorded that podcast today. It is great. So I can't recommend that highly enough. So if you aren't following Excelsior Cast, you definitely should. That's at Excelsior Cast on Twitter. You can find Excelsior on iTunes or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. That is going to do it. We have a lot of reading to get through this week. Guys, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Thank you so much for your support this week. I will talk to you all again very soon. Okay, one more. It's still bad. It's still bad. And the ice has not helped, which is a baffling thing. I would have thought that colder would be better, but yeah, okay. That'll do it for this week's Point North Live Q&A. Thank you so much for listening. I'll talk to you all again soon. Until then, take care.